All right, back on Morning Line, our final segment with Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton. Good to have you on. Just as we wrap things up, just as we put this all together, is just trying to think more about, whether or not, certain laws are followed and the like moving forward. Basically, in general, most of the general public out there would say, gosh, I wish state lawmakers might take a harder look at, I don't know if it needs to be in the enforcement of the sitting laws on juvenile crime, or if there need to be tougher laws on juvenile crime. Mm-hmm. But, we see so many young people committing adult crimes. What do you think with regard to that? Where's the answer? Is it tougher laws being passed, or you don't think they're being prosecuted the way they should be?
I think there's a combination of both. We've been in East Tennessee and West Tennessee to talk with DAs and sheriffs and police chiefs about juvenile crime. One of the issues you have is that juvenile crime laws are not tough enough from their standpoint, because what you have is you have adults who recruit these juveniles to go break into these cars. Mm-hmm. If the adult breaks into it, there's a harsher consequence. The juvenile, they know they could do 7, 8 cars before anything really comes of the 8th car. And so they use these juveniles to commit these crimes because they know they're not going to be held accountable. And so they're able to continue the crime spree. So when you have things that don't line up, whether you have a DA who's saying, I'm not going to prosecute anything, whether they committed a crime or not, all the way to the crime's not being tough enough. Now, in juvenile crime, there's some thought about how do you do some intervention? How do you come in before they get to the 8th time, at the 3rd time, and try to pull them out of that environment?
Restorative.
And give them the capability of learning how to not get back in there. But there needs to become a point with juvenile crime where it's tough. And that's what we passed this year with adult crimes, 33 different crimes on against women, against children, where we put in 100% truth in sentencing. One thing that we do know is the federal crime is very tough. State crime and the consequences is not very tough. Mm-hmm. And so criminals don't want to go to the federal courtroom because they know if they get charged and they go to jail, then they're going to stay for a long time. And so you want to give people the opportunity to get help to get out of the crime spree, but if they get to a point, you've got to put them in jail and you've got to be tough about it.
As far as marijuana crimes are concerned, do you think there will ever be a day in the state of Tennessee where medical marijuana is made legal?
I think potentially, yeah. I'm surprised that so far that, you've had President Obama, President Trump, and President Biden, none of them have done the one thing is declassify it from a controlled substance 1 down to something. They had the authority to do that. They do all these executive orders. You think they could do something like that. You also have the Attorney General of the United States who can do it.
Is that one of the big stumbling blocks? I know there's been action or talk of having that happen, but it hasn't, I guess.
I think it is because what that is, that makes it truly medical, right? It allows the doctors to prescribe it, allows the pharmacists to fill it within the regulatory ability that's in place, so you don't have all these other places going. But also, a lot of times here in the state, when people have come in and said we want medical marijuana, they come in with gummy bears and chocolate bars and things that aren't usually in the medical field, right? Like nebulizers, inhalers, other things. And so if we're truly going to go down the medical route, then let's go down the medical route, but let's don't try to go down the medical route to just do recreational and entice people to take something.
And I don't know if you have a thought on this. I mean, just based on how much you hear, and it can be misleading, but I think there's a chance for sure medical and possibly recreational would pass if it was ever put to a referendum to the people. And I know that's not an option in Tennessee. But, I mean, just don't your constituents tell you as much? I mean, that's what's got me is that there are state lawmakers who still will vote against this. Mm-hmm. And I just find it hard to believe that the majority of their constituents agree.
Well, I think if looking at Colorado, I think there's some interesting data starting to come out from Colorado, who is the first state. I think also there's a lot of members who feel adamantly that depending on at what age you take, if you start using marijuana, it has adverse effects on your brain and brain growth. That's a lot of members think that. But also you have people who just believe it's a gateway drug to something else, right? That they may start with marijuana and it may go into meth and it may go into something else. And so there's just a lot of philosophies around it. I think if you're trying to go recreational, absolutely not. I don't think you'll ever see recreational. I think if you go medical, strictly medical, and for people who have cancer and other things that it's shown to help, there's studies out there that show that marijuana helps people who have COVID, right? And so if you go strictly medical, I think you have a better chance than trying to make it look medical and doing recreational.
I think that's probably the case in Tennessee. Right. You realize, though, here in Davidson County, half an ounce of recreational is legal.
Not according to state law, but that's fine. I mean, I get it. I get it. I mean, law enforcement only can do so much, and I understand. that there's other crimes that they want to go after. I understand. But you also have to understand, too, that you have these criminals out there, and if they know that Davidson County, you can carry a half an ounce, and they get these juveniles, and they all are carrying half an ounce to sell or whatever, and they get caught, they're not going to be charged. And that's where I get back to is your laws need to be consistent, and things need to be prosecuted. If we need to change the law, let's change the law, make it statewide. Let's just don't have different jurisdictions interpreting law differently.
And so that's what you guys do. You pass laws. And so just getting back as the big picture on this, whether or not we're talking about the omnibus bill and what's on there, or if we're talking about marijuana or the like, your take is, look, state lawmakers have passed this. If it gets signed or gets past the governor, it's on the books. Municipalities need to abide by the law. And if they don't like it, then they need to run for office and change the laws. Is that
Well, I mean, local government has ordinances that they pass down to businesses that they want the businesses to follow, right? They do that all the time. Mm-hmm. So why should the business follow their ordinance and they don't want to follow our state law, the local governments, right? I mean, it's the same thing. And so if they want to have their ordinances to go to businesses and those businesses to do what they want to, state law has the same effect on the local government.
If there are gray areas, and you said that, if there are, it can be addressed at the next session. I mean, do you anticipate there's any possibility of lawsuits challenging any of what was passed in the omnibus bill?
Very well could be. I mean, time will tell. We did put a provision in there where if there's something deemed that the courts want to throw out, it doesn't throw out the whole thing. It's only a section, just because we anticipate that someone's going to try to file a lawsuit. Have no idea why or what it could be. But even in the school mask thing with ADA, which has been a big issue, we think we put in place a mechanism to protect someone who has a disability and the parent requests it, protect them in the school, which would get us into the court without having to lock down the whole school for masks.
The whole school issue, and I think what everyone wants across the board, may not agree on the best way to do that, is what's safest and best for the kids.
Well, yeah.
And I'm just wondering, I mean, you have a young daughter, okay? So obviously that's close to your heart, and you want to do what you truly feel is safest and best for your kid, to make sure she stays safe. And you believe, this is the best way to leave it to people to just decide for themselves, which means your daughter could get exposed to something.
That's right, and it's also be my decision if my daughter gets vaccinated, right? It shouldn't be forced on me by government. And so I have to weigh the risk and the consequences of those actions. And so when you have government trying to force to you, you lose your ability to make those decisions for yourself.
It's just interesting, because, and I see that argument so often, how it comes about, but there are municipalities, for instance, that choose, or businesses, not to allow smoking. And the reason you don't allow smoking is because I don't smoke, and if you smoke, I don't want to breathe your secondary smoke. Get it out of my face. I don't want lung cancer from you. It's kind of like the same thing. There's different levels here of what can be told and what's safe. I mean, banning cigarette smoking because you don't want to expose other people to that smoke seems to me like, well, in requiring mandates, you don't want to risk exposing someone else to COVID, kind of the same type of thing.
Well, a little bit. We've had bills that have come before us on smoking from different associations where they want to go into Lower Broad and give the local government, Metro, the ability to make a no smoking zone all over the county. And so if you're in your business, if you're on the sidewalk, if you're in the public place and you're not on public property, you're just walking. That's too much. And so we have those battles constantly of trying to weigh where to go, what's too much, what's too little, and finding that right spot. And people are going to agree to disagree on that all the time. You're never going to make everybody happy. This bill is not perfect. Not everybody in Tennessee is going to agree with it. But we listen to the Tennesseans. We want to protect families, protect parents' right to make medical choices in the health of their kids, let them weigh the risk. We want to create uniform standards all across the state and draw a line in the sand. And we were the first state in Tennessee that passed anything like this. Texas tried and they couldn't do it. Florida's going in 2 weeks. Tennessee's the first state that laid down the chip and said, we're not in favor of unconstitutional mandates coming in from the federal government or from other areas and forcing you to do something that's against your constitutional right.
Okay, and as we said, as we wrap things up, federal government, sometimes if you don't abide by their guidelines, what do? It always comes down to purse strings. As far as what you can do as state lawmakers, if as you said, you can replace a DA in instances, if some of these municipalities don't follow some of the laws, are there other things you can do? Can you threaten to take away certain monies?
Well, there's in there about taking away BEP funding from local education associations. But if they won't follow through, we're going to be back in about 6-8 weeks, and we'll take care of it at that point in time. I mean, that's the nice thing about the General Assembly.
So you'll be watching to see between now and then. I mean, obviously you and people will observe and see, and you'll hear if there are complaints or reports of what's happening in different areas.
Absolutely.
And then based on that, you can take action. I mean, that's the plan. You wield a heavy hammer.
Well, we don't try to have a heavy hammer. We just try to lay the groundwork.
Hey, you follow the guidelines, how it goes, and all that. Listen, Speaker, thank you for coming on and tolerating me this morning. I appreciate it. It's good to have you on. It's good always to see Doug Kuffner over there.
He's good.
He's a good
Thank
guy.
you for pointing him out to us.
Yeah. He did intern here at one point.
He did.
Hey, listen, thank you again. Hopefully you'll be willing to come on again sometime.
Anytime.
All right.
Anytime.
Appreciate
Thank
it. We'll
you.
take a break. I'll be back with a programming note about tomorrow right after this. Stay with us.